for another member, Paul Foster-Bell.
Kia ora, te kai whakahaere. Sir, at the earlier stages of this debate, I posed a number of questions to the member, and I'm disappointed they haven't actually been addressed and responded to. But a few more have come to mind during the subsequent course of this debate. It has been focused solely on part one, which deals with the expansion, the first tranche of expansion in the weeks of paid parental leave. And one of the assertions made by the member during her speech at the very start of this debate, that it would have a positive effect on the breastfeeding of New Zealand children. And this is a topic that I never dreamt for a moment that I would be addressing here in our House of Representatives, but it is something that actually is very pertinent if you're interested in the health and well-being of New Zealand children. Our mokopuna, young New Zealanders, and actually has a lifelong effect on the health, the well-being and actually other social outcomes for young New Zealanders if they have the maximum opportunity to have exclusive breastfeeding. That is, to be fed human breast milk only for as long as possible in their childhood. So of course we on this side, being scientifically minded and a government that's based on rationality and logic, accept the research in that area. But what has yet to be I think demonstrated completely, and certainly to the level that I am totally convinced that you can claim an extension in paid parental leave to the 22 weeks provided for in the first tranche of this bill as per part one. What I'm yet to be convinced over is that it will have, I think, the transformative effects that the member was alluding to, particularly among some of the more vulnerable communities in New Zealand. So we saw statistics which came from empirical studies in other countries. We saw studies conducted in Norway that were providing arguments in favour. We saw United Kingdom, American, very different cultural contexts, because when the Ministry of Health came in to talk to the New Zealand example, which is very different to those Nordic or Scandinavian, North American and European examples, the evidence was a little bit less clear. So the questions I suppose I have for the member was, what weighting does she put on the figures that actually show Māori and Pacifica do have a significantly lower rate of breastfeeding, particularly exclusive breastfeeding, and how does she think that the extension of paid parental leave to 22 weeks will have a significant or transformative effect on those communities where there is a major underrepresentation of exclusive breastfeeding. Similarly, I'd also like to know whether she thinks that there might be some, I guess in some ways, negative consequences by saying that you have to stay at home, you have to be on paid parental leave to be able to breastfeed or to be able to exclusively breastfeed. Is this actually sending a negative signal out there to say that this is something that shouldn't be encouraged in companies, even in this place? When I first started working for the National Party, actually I worked for Catherine Rich, who was a very fine List MP based in Dunedin at the time. And she was one of the few members who actually had a baby while she was in Parliament. She was actually one of the pioneers, I suppose, in that regard, and was provided with a room near the chamber so that she was provided with a room near the chamber so that she was able to...
Interesting, but part one's about 22 weeks, so tie it back to 22 weeks. Paul Foster-Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess the point I'm making is that breastfeeding is a fundamental premise of why the member is arguing for an extension to 22 weeks. The evidence was significant but not entirely conclusive that extending paid parental leave to 22 weeks will have that transformative effect on the levels of exclusive breastfeeding, and will there be a knock-on effect, particularly to private companies, but also the public service, where we're saying you actually have to go home, you have to be on leave to be able to do this important. It's a natural function, but it's also very important for the health of children. It gives them that immunological, nutritional, every advantage in the health even educational and going on into rates of offending. We did have a significant range of evidence. I want to commend the members of the committee who looked at it very closely and scrutinised that. I want to commend our tenacious committee clerk who did a wonderful job of ensuring that we followed up with officials to get access to the evidence we needed. But is the member convinced that that evidence is as clear as she seems to want to have the House believe?
Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable Dr.